Good morning, everyone, on this beautiful fall morning. And we'll start with the affirmation of our baptism. Do you intend to continue in the covenant God made with you in holy baptism? Live among God's faithful people? Hear the word of God and share in the Lord's Supper? Proclaim the good news of God in Christ through word and deed? Serve all people following the example of Jesus and strive for justice and peace in all the earth? We do, and ask God to help and guide us. Welcome in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I invite you now to confess with me. When Jesus was born, he came to a world filled with poverty and violence and fear. He lived among people who did not always walk their walk perfectly. But just to say, Jesus was no stranger to sin. Our sin comes as no surprise to him. His love and mercy should come as no surprise to us. Therefore, let us make our confession before God and one another, first in silent prayer.
Gracious God, our wonderful counselor, the Almighty God, we come to you to confess. We know that sometimes we are happily distracted by parties and twinkling lights, and sometimes we are happily curled up in the solitude and warmth of our homes. In our distraction, we do not heed the cries of the world. We turn a blind eye to suffering and need and grief. Forgive us for that. Forgive us, and more than that, turn us around to see all your children with the truth of their lives, that we would set aside our distractions and answer your call to go out, to heal, to help, to proclaim good news and joy. Through Christ, we pray. Amen.
Friends, hear the good news. God so loved the world that God sent Jesus to us, not to condemn the world, but in order that we might be saved, healed, and forgiven through him. Thanks be to God. Alleluia. Amen.
All are welcome. All are welcome, friend and stranger, at the banquet of the Savior. All are welcome, all are welcome here. All are welcome, friend and stranger, at the banquet of the Savior. All are welcome, all are welcome here. From the woman who comes crying, leaving tears at Jesus' feet, to the man who knows the right way but cannot see. All are welcome, friend and stranger, at the banquet of the Savior. All are welcome, all are welcome here. From the ones who feel forgotten, those who sense their place is gone, to the ones who live in hunger, here you belong. All are welcome, friend and stranger, at the banquet of the Savior. All are welcome, all are welcome here. Go into the streets and cities, to the farms and families, tell about the splendid table, God's mercy. All are welcome, friend and stranger, at the banquet of the Savior. All are welcome, all are welcome
The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all.
And also with you.
Let us pray. God, give us faith to be steadfast amid the tumults of this world, trusting that your kingdom comes and your will is done through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Pray with me, Psalm 16. Protect me, O God, for I take refuge in you. I have said to the Lord, Lord, you are my Lord, my good above all others. All my delight is in the godly that are in the land, upon those who are noble among the people. But those who run after other gods shall have their troubles multiplied. I will not pour drink out offerings to such gods, never take their name upon my lips. O Lord, you are my portion and my cup. It is you who uphold my lot. My boundaries enclose a pleasant land. Indeed, I have a rich inheritance. I will bless the Lord who gives me counsel. My heart teaches me night after night. I have set the Lord always before me. Because God is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. My heart therefore is glad, and my spirit rejoices. My body also shall rest in hope, for you will not abandon me to the grave, nor let your Holy One see the pit. You will show me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy, and in your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Our second reading is from Daniel 12, 1-3. At that time, Michael, the great prince, the protector of your people, shall arise. There shall be a time of anguish such as never has occurred since nations first came into existence. But at that time, your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Word of God, word of life. Thanks be to God.
The Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. As Jesus came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be, and what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. When I listen to the radio, it often feels like we live in the end times predicted in our gospels. It feels like things are just getting worse every day. COVID isn't going away. Many countries are preparing to spend another Christmas socially distanced with online worship services. The number of people living below the poverty line declined for a little while thanks to stimulus checks and is rising again with prices for food and gas spiking. And then there's the climate, our greatest patient. experiencing fever dreams and shivering colds and floody noses all at once and all at extreme levels. We know that pretty well here in California, don't we? Every year, more and more people lose their homes due to catastrophes or illness or jobs that don't pay a living wage. The lucky ones can double up with relatives or friends until no one wants to host them anymore. Others move into their cars, and some must live out in the streets, unprotected, vulnerable to people, animals, and harsh weather conditions. It feels like things are getting worse. It feels like the apocalypse is near, and it is. It has already begun. Things are getting uncovered. Lots has been said in the past 2 years about the many truths that this pandemic has uncovered. Truly apocalyptic, truly uncovering times. About the huge differences in income and flexibility to work from home and to manage childcare without schools. About the persistent inequity along racial lines, the imminent racism and the myth of the American dream. We've always known that hard work doesn't necessarily make one rich. I mean, otherwise, all the single moms in this country working many jobs would be millionaires. Yet many of them struggle with paying the rent and getting food onto the table. Apocalyptic work is the work of uncovering the truth. And in our days, journalists often take on that job, like a friend of mine, Gabrielle Lurie, who works for the San Francisco Chronicle. I met her when I helped a homeless family in Berkeley get connected to resources. And Gabby was writing a long-time story on them, following them for over 6 months as they tried to piece their lives together. And Gabby really spent so much time with them. She even spent Christmas with them, and that meant for Gabby to not be with her own family. And just the other day, I saw another article on unhoused neighbors in Oakland. And Gabby was one of the journalists who spent a lot of time with the people. Their stories are heartbreaking and heartwarming. Stories of losing the family's home and now living within a few blocks from those childhood places, but in shelters and tents with little hope. Some got sick and lost their jobs. Some got a messy and expensive divorce. Some fought with their families over the inheritance. What they all have in common, there are no simple answers, no easy ways out, and there's no single person to blame. It's complicated. It has a lot to do with the system we're living in. And it feels irreversible with the current prices rising even more. And yet, the little hope to find a roof over their head again keeps them going. One of the guys who had battled cancer said, "You know, I was lucky an organization picked up my healthcare bill for my cancer treatment. Once I was cleared, I was released from the hospital out into the streets. Who does that? Who pays thousands of dollars to cure someone just to send me back into my tent?" It's a two-way question to me. Who does that? Who thinks that the life of an unhoused sick man is worth that much money? And who does that? Who pays for a cure and then stops caring for the man once he's healthy again? It's an apocalyptic question, a question our society has to bear to be asked. People are starving for food, for attention, for love, for a roof over their head, for a life in dignity. People want to be seen, to be valued, to get a chance again in life. And while we feel for these less fortunate neighbors, while we pity them, donate money to wonderful organizations like Abode, we also often are afraid of them, of their smell, their problems, their hopelessness. But really, I think we're afraid to hear their stories, because those stories will often reveal one thing: that those unhoused neighbors once were kids too, loved by parents, kids who wanted to be superheroes, doctors and astronauts and teachers and maybe millionaires, kids with dreams, and parents with dreams for their kids. Some have grown up poor and just never made it out of that circle of poverty forced upon so many in this country and this world. And others grew up in middle-class families, and then something happened. A divorce, an illness, the death of someone dear, the loss of one's job. Things that have happened to many of us. Things that happen to people during a lifetime because life is messy. Which is why it can be scary to listen to the stories of our unhoused neighbors, because they are often so ordinary stories. They could have been our story hadn't we been lucky. They could still be our story. They could have been our kids' stories. When the first jobs out of college don't cover the bills, when someone needs to deal with their mental health first or with a chronic illness, and 40-hour weeks are just out of the picture. When drugs take over, or crime. And of course, we can take the self-righteous route and simply say, well, we always helped each other. It's what families do. We can say that, forgetting that it's often not about love or care, but about the question whether we can afford that help or not. And so many families simply cannot. And so often it's generational. Poverty is generational. That's another one of these apocalyptic truths. Things are getting uncovered, and it's not pretty what we get to see. It's scary. And because we're living in these apocalyptic times, we can't pretend we don't see anymore. Jesus took that privilege away from us when he claimed that the truth will make us free and nothing else, and that he, Jesus, is that truth. He also said he also never said it would be easy to live in that truth, because to follow the truth is never easy. And sure, we can still deny what we see and know to be true, but that's hard too, just exhausting in a different way. 2,000 years ago, Mark quoted Jesus saying, "When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." And in so many ways, it sounds like a description of our times, with earthquakes and famines and wars that don't ever seem to end. They just seem to evolve into different conflicts. And indeed, it is a description of our times, as it is one of Jesus's times and of Mark's times. Mark wrote his gospel during or just after the disastrous Jewish revolt against Roman imperial occupation in Palestine, which was about 66 to 70 after Christ. Mark's world was shattered and shaken to its core. The Roman armies vanquished the rebellion and destroyed the Jewish temple, desecrating what for Jews was nothing less than the sacred heart of the world. The end must have felt so near. It was the only thing that made sense, especially since the temple had just been finished 7 years before its last destruction, built out of large stones, 35 feet long by 18 feet wide by 12 feet high. No wonder Jesus's friends marvel at its sight. And they wonder why Jesus doesn't, why he must be so pessimistic. Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down. Jesus sees things differently. Where his friends are impressed by appearance and massiveness, Jesus sees behind the scenes. That the Jews are only granted as much freedom as the Romans can bear. That their freedom is a freedom in bondage, dependent on the powers that rule. That they might feel strong now, strong enough to look down on Jesus and his friends, strong enough to persecute him for his unsettling gospel of love and inclusion, but that their days are numbered as well. Not because God doesn't love them anymore, but because they trusted the powers and let those powers divide them as people. Jesus sees behind the walls we have put around ourselves and behind our masks. Jesus sees that we are only granted as much freedom as the economic powers around us can bear. That our freedom is a freedom in bondage as long as we allow people to be treated so badly around us, to be denied the human right of housing and health. That we might feel strong enough to look down on the unfortunate homeless people around us, strong enough to often just wish they would disappear and not be our problem anymore. I mean, honestly, right? That's often what we just hope. Not because God doesn't love them, but because we just can't stand the sight of them. And the knowledge that our way of life makes others suffer in poverty, because we trust the economic powers around us more than God's life-giving word. Because we still hope that Jesus' words of great buildings tumbling isn't a word for our times anymore, that it has come true often enough in the past and won't happen again. While secretly, we all know that yes, it will happen again. The uncovering of truth won't stop until the end of the days. We can be scared. Or we listen to the second part of the gospel story where Jesus teaches his disciples what to do and how to live when the walls come tumbling down. Jesus insists on calm strength and generous love in the face of the apocalyptic. Don't give in to terror. Don't despair. Don't capitalize on chaos. God shows us how to bear the apocalypse well with the radical, self-sacrificial love Jesus modeled on the cross. What's happening, Jesus promises at the end of this week's gospel reading, is not death, but birth. Something is struggling to be born. And yes, the birth pangs hurt, but God is our midwife. And what God birthed will never lead to desolation. Yes, we're called to bear witness in the ruins, but rest assured, these birth pangs will end in joy. A new era is dawning, and we get to be a part of it because we are apocalyptic people, people who can stand the truth, people who don't look away. Thanks be to God. Amen.
I invite you now in your home churches to join me in professing our faith by reciting the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, God's only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day, he rose again. He ascended into heaven. He is seated at the right hand of the Father, and he will come to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, and the resurrection of the body, and life everlasting. Amen. Eternal God, you hold firm amid the changes of this world. Hear us now as we pray for the church, the world, and everyone in need. You raise up the poor to give them the best rooms in your house. You pull the broken from the dust of the world, brushing them off and clothing them with joy. You exalt those we have pushed aside and let them say grace at the feast in heaven. You are our God, and we worship you. When no one else will listen to us, we can pour out our soul to you. When no one notices us, you see our misery and fill us with joy. When everyone else forgets who we are, you remember us and call us by name. You are our spirit of love, and we welcome you into our hearts. God, our guide, You are greater than we can imagine. Surround congregations with your expansive inclusion. Be present in the midst of disagreements, differences, and questions. Unite people of diverse viewpoints in the love of Christ. God, we pray for the Acts for Vitality program we just entered together with Holy Redeemer and Holy Trinity. We pray for vital hearts and minds, for acts of love and courage, for a vision of your love for Tri-City and our role in that vision. God, we pray for our unhoused neighbors navigating this time as winter is approaching. Show them your love through our hands and feet and words. God, our beginning and our end, your beloved people shine like the brightness of the sky. We thank you for the lives of all who rest in your eternal mercy, from famous saints to the people we have loved. Assure us of your resurrection promise. For what else and for whom else do we pray? If you have a prayer to share, you can unmute now. If you wish to pray on your own, please do so. God, our hope and strength, we entrust to you all for whom we pray. Remain with us always, through Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen. Hey. Thanks for all you are, you do, and you give to help our congregation thrive and the world become a better place. We think what we offer is not that much or can accomplish anything of worth. But with you, Holy God, all things are possible. So we trust you will use them, multiply them, offer them to those who need hope, healing, grace, and peace in their lives. Amen.
Wherever and whoever you are, communion with God is coming to you. Prepare to welcome your guest. The Lord be with us. We lift up our hearts. We lift them to the Lord. We give thanks to the Lord our God. God of wonder and power, by a single word spoken into the silent emptiness of chaos, creation burst forth early in the morning. Day after day, your imagination crafted beauty beyond compare. Meadows sprinkled clean with joy's water, the sun appearing through dawn's curtains, you offered humanity a home for all time. But we hired ourselves out to sin, becoming bloated on the bread of death. Through the prophets, you offered again and again to take us back, but year after year, we continue to provoke you with our rebellious nature. You sent Jesus to us so your hope might be written upon our hearts, so we might be redeemed by your singular word of love. So we lift our voices in praise to you, singing your grace forever and ever. And now I invite you all to say the words of institution together with me so that they will be said and heard in every single one of our home churches. On the night in which he gave himself up for us, he took bread, gave thanks to you, broke the bread, gave it to his disciples and said, "Take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." When the supper was over, he took the cup, gave thanks to you, gave it to his disciples and said, "Drink from this, all of you. This is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." Great is the mystery of faith. Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again.
Amen.
Amen.
Jesus called us his children, and he taught us his own prayer. Join me now in reciting that prayer. Our Father in
Father
heaven,
in
in heaven,
hallowed
hallowed
be
be
Hallowed
your
be
name.
name.
Your kingdom
come,
come, your
your
will
will
be
be
done
done
on earth as in
on
heaven.
earth
as in
Give us
Give
heaven.
us
today
today
our
our
Give us
daily
daily
today
bread.
our
bread.
daily
Forgive
bread.
us our
Sins,
sins.
Our
And
sins,
forgive those who sin
forgive
against
those
us.
who sin
And
against
save
us.
us from the
Save
time
us
of
This from the
trial
time of
and
trial,
deliver us from evil.
deliver us
for the
from
The
evil.
kingdom,
kingdom, the
power, and the
power, and the
glory,
glory
are
are
now and
yours,
forever.
now and forever.
Forever.
Amen.
Amen.
God's gifts for God's people. The body of Christ given for you. The blood of Christ shed for you.
Our next song is called Psalm 19, and for obvious reasons, because it's based on several verses within that psalm. But mostly to me, it is a very special song for anyone who raises their voice in praise to the Lord. Whether you're in a choir, a praise band, or just sitting in the pews or sitting at home listening to this song. So please join me in singing Psalm 19. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, pleasing to you. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, my God. Again, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, pleasing to you. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, my God. You're my rock and my redeemer. You're the reason that I sing. I desire to be a blessing in your eyes. Every hour and every moment, Lord, I want to be your servant. I desire to be a blessing in your eyes, in your eyes. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, pleasing to you. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, my God. You're my rock and my redeemer. You're the reason that I sing. I desire to be a blessing in your eyes. Every hour and every moment, Lord, I want to be your servant. I desire to be a blessing in your eyes, in your eyes.
We are so grateful for this communion. May we surround with its strength and comfort those we know. May we search out those we do not know to offer hope and help widely and freely. Amen.
May God the Father keep a protective eye on you. May Christ Jesus show you his grace and mercy. And may the Holy Spirit give you a vision of the life of the world made new. Amen.
Go forth now as God's people. We will go to
Go to offer joy to those in misery, to remember all who have been forgotten.
Go now as sisters and brothers of Jesus.
We will go to offer
to
the through our hearts,
rooms of our hearts
The
to
lonely,
the
to
lonely,
pick
to
up.
that all
pick up
those
all
who have
those
been
who have
down.
Go forth now as hearts of the Spirit.
We will go to
Go
share
to share the
double
double
portion of
portions
grace
of grace
and
with
invite
the
others
empty
You
to
invite
walk
others.
the path of faith
The
with us.
path of faith with us.
Amen.
Amen.